Rain hammered the tin roof of Mara Dalton's old farmhouse like bullets searching for a way through. The kind of storm that turns gravel driveways into rivers and makes the power lines dance with electricity they can no longer carry. She stood in the suffocating darkness of her kitchen, cell phone screen casting her face in pale blue light, the only illumination in a house that had gone cold hours ago. Above her, through the thin ceiling, came the sound that had stolen her sleep for 3 straight nights. Caleb's labored breathing, punctuated by coughs that rattled like broken glass in his small chest. Pneumonia. The doctor's words still echoed in her skull.
He needs treatment.
Today, not tomorrow. But tomorrow was when the County Assistance Program might have funds. Tomorrow was when the Charitable Foundation might return her calls. Tomorrow was always the answer in a town where being poor meant being patient, even when patience could kill you. Mara pressed her palms against the chipped countertop, steadying herself against a wave of exhaustion so profound it felt like drowning. She'd already sold everything. Her mother's wedding ring gone. Her father's hunting rifle that had hung above the mantel for 20 years gone. Even her truck, her one escape route from this dying town, gone to a scrap dealer who'd given her half what it was worth. The only person left was Jonas Hale, her childhood friend, the boy who'd promised her forever when they were 17, before life got complicated and he got ambitious. He owed her money from a loan she'd given him 2 years ago. Money she'd never expected back until now, when expecting it became the difference between life and death. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through her contacts. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb fracture from when she dropped it last week, too exhausted to catch it. Numbers blurred and doubled behind the broken glass. She found what she thought was Jonas's number and pressed call. It went straight to voicemail.
Of course it did.
Jonas had been avoiding her for months. Mara's voice came out raw, breaking on every third word. Jonas, please. I know we haven't talked. I know things ended badly. But Caleb, he's sick. Really sick. The hospital won't admit him without a down payment, and I'm tapped out. I need that $2,000 you borrowed. I need it now. I'm at 43, Riverbend Road. Same place, same house.
Please.
I can't lose him too. Not after Mom. Please call me back. Please. She ended the call and let the phone drop to the counter, her hands shaking too hard to hold it anymore. The storm swallowed the silence. Wind howled through cracks in the window frames. Somewhere in the darkness, the house settled with a groan that sounded almost human. Then her phone lit up. Unknown number. Mara frowned, wiping rainwater, or maybe tears, from her face. She picked up the phone and read the message. Who is Jonas? Her stomach clenched. Wrong number. God, of course. Even desperation couldn't make her lucky. Her thumbs flew across the cracked screen.
Sorry.
Wrong call. Please ignore. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Reappeared. Each pulse of those dots felt like a heartbeat she couldn't control. What does he owe you? Something in those 5 words made her skin prickle. The tone was too calm. Too controlled. Like someone asking a question they already knew the answer to. Mara didn't respond. She set the phone down and backed away from it, as if distance could undo the mistake. The phone buzzed again.
Once. Twice.
3 times in rapid succession. Address confirmed. 43, Riverbend Road. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Her breath caught in her throat. She hadn't given an address in the message, only in the voicemail. And whoever this was had already pulled it, had already looked her up, had already decided to come. No, she whispered to the empty kitchen. No, no, no. Lightning split the sky, turning the world white for a single frozen second. In that flash, she saw them. Headlights cutting through the rain, still distant but approaching fast. Not 1 vehicle. 4. Maybe 5. All black. All moving in formation. Mara's legs went numb. She stumbled to the window, gripping the frame to keep from collapsing. Through the water-streaked glass, she watched 4 black SUVs glide up her driveway like sharks circling prey. No sirens. No flashing lights. Just the low, predatory growl of expensive engines, and the crunch of gravel under reinforced tires. They parked in a semicircle, headlights extinguished, surrounding the house, blocking every exit. The driver's door of the first vehicle opened. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a tailored black coat that probably cost more than her entire year's income. He moved with the kind of confidence that didn't need to announce itself. The kind that came from knowing no one would dare stop you. Even from 50 feet away, through rain and darkness, Mara recognized him. Not his face, she'd never seen his face, but his presence. The way the other men straightened when he passed. The way the storm seemed to quiet around him.
Dorian Vassari.
She'd heard the name in whispers at the general store, in hushed conversations that died the moment she approached. The man who ran everything in this county that wasn't supposed to exist. The man who owned judges and sheriffs and entire towns without ever signing a deed. The man whose name you didn't say out loud unless you had a death wish. Her phone vibrated in her hand. She looked down, already knowing what she'd see. Open the door, Mara Dalton. He knew her name. Her full name. And she'd never told him. Caleb, she breathed, instinct overriding terror. She turned toward the stairs, every maternal fiber screaming at her to grab her brother and run, even though there was nowhere to run. A knock came at the door. Not a pound. Not a bang. Just 3 soft, measured taps. The kind of knock from someone who had never once needed to force their way inside. Who knew doors would open. Mara's hand hovered over the deadbolt. Every logical thought told her to call the police, to scream, to do anything but what she was about to do. But logic had left the building the moment those black cars arrived. She opened the door. He stood on her porch, rain sliding off his coat in sheets but never quite touching him. Up close, Dorian Vassari was younger than she'd imagined, maybe 35, with sharp features carved from stone and eyes the color of winter steel. He didn't smile, didn't threaten, didn't need to do either. Mara Dalton, he said, his voice low and certain. Not a question. A confirmation. You called me instead of Jonas Hale. A fortunate mistake. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. I didn't mean to. I just need help. For my brother. I didn't mean to bother. You didn't bother me, Dorian interrupted, his gaze steady and unnervingly calm. Desperation is rarely accidental. And you were desperate enough to reach out to Jonas Hale, a man who's been running for me for 6 weeks. The world tilted sideways. Jonas is running from you? Dorian's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Calculation, reassessment. He stole from my organization. $300,000. He's been hiding ever since.
He paused, letting that sink in.
Your voicemail told me exactly where he'll come. To help you. Because Jonas Hale might be a thief, but he's not heartless. Not where you're concerned. Mara felt the ground dissolve beneath her feet. She'd called Jonas for help. Instead, she'd given away his location to the one man he feared most. I didn't know, she said, hating how small her voice sounded. I swear I didn't know. I believe you. And somehow, impossibly, he sounded like he meant it. Which is why I'm going to offer you protection instead of consequences. Protection. The word felt foreign on her tongue. Dorian stepped forward, not inside, but close enough that she could smell cedar and rain and something metallic. Power, if power had a scent. Jonas will come to you. Others may come too. People who want what he stole, people who will use you to get to him. Your brother is sick. You're alone. You're vulnerable. His eyes held hers. I'm offering to change that. Thunder rolled across the sky. In the distance, Caleb coughed, a sound that seemed to punctuate every terrible decision she'd ever made. What do I have to do? Mara whispered. Dorian's expression softened, just barely. Call Jonas. Tell him you're desperate and alone. He'll come. And when he does, I'll handle the rest. And then you and Caleb will be under my protection. Medical care.
Security.
Stability.
He paused.
Everything you called Jonas begging for, I can provide. Permanently. Mara's throat tightened. Protection. Safety. The things she'd been chasing her entire life, always just out of reach. But from the Mafia. From a man who commanded fear with a glance. "Why?" she managed. "Why would you help me?" For the first time, something human flickered across Dorian Vassari's face. "Because power without purpose is just noise. And because you didn't beg for yourself. Only for someone you love." He extended his hand, not to shake, but to steady. "That's rare. Worth protecting." Outside, the rain continued to fall. The black SUVs waited like silent sentinels. Somewhere in the night, Jonas Hale was running, not knowing the trap was already set. And Mara Dalton, desperate, exhausted, out of options, took the hand of the devil himself. Dorian Vassari didn't cross the threshold until Mara's slight nod gave him permission. Even then, he moved with measured precision, removing his coat, shaking off the rain in a single efficient motion, his eyes never leaving hers. It was the kind of control that made her skin prickle. Not violent, not threatening, just absolute. He scanned the living room in 3 seconds flat. The empty shelves where family photos used to sit, the threadbare couch with its sunken cushions, the pile of medical bills on the coffee table she'd stopped opening. His gaze lingered on the fireplace, cold, filled with ash from weeks ago when she could still afford firewood. "Your mother passed 14 months ago," he said quietly, not a question. "Breast cancer." The bills came to $63,000 after insurance. "Your father's construction accident left debts totaling another 42. You've been working 2 jobs, diner shifts and weekend house cleaning. Still not enough." Mara's breath caught. "How do you?" "I know everything that happens in this county." He moved further inside, his presence somehow filling the small space without crowding it. "Every loan, every late payment, every person desperate enough to make dangerous choices." His eyes found hers again. "Jonas Hale borrowed money from you 2 years ago. $2,000 you couldn't afford to lose. He promised to pay you back within 6 months." Shame burned up her neck. He knew. Everything. The desperation she'd hidden from neighbors, the pride she'd swallowed working jobs that paid in crumpled bills, and pity. "He said he had an opportunity," Mara whispered. "A job that would set him up. He just needed startup capital." Her voice cracked. "I believed him." "You shouldn't have." Dorian's tone wasn't cruel, just factual. "Jonas Hale has been working for me for 3 years. Low-level collections, debt management, nothing significant. Then 6 weeks ago, he was tasked with delivering payment to one of my partners. $300,000 in bearer bonds."
He paused.
He never delivered them. The room spun. Mara gripped the back of the couch to steady herself. "You're saying Jonas stole from you. I'm saying Jonas betrayed an organization that doesn't forgive betrayal." Dorian's expression remained neutral, but his words carried weight that pressed against her chest. "He's been running ever since. Changing locations every few days. Using burner phones. Avoiding anyone who might know him." His head tilted slightly. "Until you left him a voicemail begging for help, telling him exactly where you are." Horror flooded through her. "Oh God." "Jonas will come," Dorian continued. "Because despite being a thief, he still cares about you. More than he should." He stepped closer, and Mara fought the urge to retreat. "But he's not the only one who'll come, Mara. There are others looking for him. People who don't share my restraint. People who would use you and your brother as leverage to draw him out."
"No."
The word came out strangled. "I didn't know. I just needed." "I know what you needed." His voice softened, just barely. "I can hear it upstairs. Your brother coughing like his lungs are trying to escape. You're drowning in debt, and the people who should help, this town, this system, have turned their backs." Something almost human flickered in his steel blue eyes. "You're not at fault here. You're just collateral damage in someone else's war." Tears burned Mara's eyes. She'd worked so hard to keep Caleb safe, to shield him from everything their parents' deaths had left behind. And in one desperate moment, one wrong number, she'd painted a target on both their backs. "What do I do?" Her voice broke completely. Dorian reached into his jacket, Mara flinched, and pulled out a card. Simple.
Black.
A single phone number embossed in silver. "You accept my protection," he said. "I have a doctor on call. Caleb will receive treatment tonight. I'll station men around your property. Jonas will come, and when he does, my people will handle it quietly. You won't be touched. Neither will your brother." Mara stared at the card like it might burn her.
Why?
"Why would you protect us?" "Because power without purpose is meaningless." He pressed the card into her trembling hand. "And because you didn't ask for any of this. You just loved someone who needed you." The words hung between them, impossibly gentle from a man who commanded fear. Mara's fingers closed around the card. "There's a cost, isn't there?" she whispered. "There's always a cost." Dorian's expression remained unreadable. "The cost is letting me do what needs to be done when Jonas arrives. After that." He moved toward the door, collecting his coat. "You'll owe me nothing. You have my word." He stepped back into the rain, but before she could process what was happening, he turned back. His face was half-shadowed, eyes catching the dim light from inside. "One more thing, Mara." His voice dropped lower, urgent for the first time. "You and your brother are already targets. You just haven't seen who's watching you yet." The door closed. The deadbolt clicked. Mara's legs barely carried her up the stairs. Behind her, she heard Dorian's quiet command into his phone. "Send Martinelli.
Now."
Full medical kit. Then silence as he presumably listened to whatever objection came through. "I don't care if he's at his daughter's recital. Now." She pushed open Caleb's door. The room was small, barely big enough for the twin bed and dresser their father had built years ago. A nightlight shaped like a rocket ship, Caleb's 8th birthday present, back when their mother was still alive, cast weak blue shadows across the walls. Her brother lay curled on his side, chest rising and falling in shallow, labored breaths that wheezed like whined through broken shutters. "Caleb," she whispered, kneeling beside the bed. He didn't wake. His forehead burned against her palm. Fever spiking again despite the medicine she'd given him hours ago. The medicine that had cost $43 she'd scraped together from tip jars and couch cushions. The medicine that clearly wasn't enough. Mara gathered him into her arms, careful not to jostle him too much, and held him against her chest the way she used to when he had nightmares after their mother's funeral. He was 13 now, almost too big for this, but right now he felt small, fragile, breakable. Silent tears slid down her face. She pressed her forehead against his damp hair and let herself break, just for a moment, just here in the dark where no one could see how close she was to shattering completely. Except someone did see. Dorian stood in the doorway, a shadow darker than the rest. She hadn't heard him follow her upstairs, hadn't heard the floorboards creak under his weight. He simply appeared, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable in the dim light. Mara started to speak, to apologize, to explain, to defend her right to fall apart in her own brother's room, but something in his face stopped her. His jaw was tight. His eyes, usually so cold and controlled, had gone soft at the edges. He was watching her hold Caleb, watching her cry, and for just a second, less than a breath, something human crossed his features. Something that looked almost like recognition, like he'd once held someone the same way. "The doctor will be here in 20 minutes, Dorian said quietly. His voice had changed, lost some of its sharp edges. "Dr. Martinelli, best pulmonary specialist in the state. He'll bring everything needed for pneumonia treatment, antibiotics, oxygen, for fluids." Mara's throat closed. She couldn't speak, could only nod. Dorian stepped further into the room, moving with that same unsettling grace. He crouched beside the bed, eye level with her, and for the first time since he'd arrived, he looked at Caleb instead of her. Really looked. At the too-pale face, the cracked lips, the way his small body shuddered with each breath. "How long has he been sick?" Dorian asked. 5 days. Her voice came out broken. "I took him to the emergency room on day 3. They gave him a prescription and sent us home. Said to come back if he got worse." A bitter laugh escaped her. "He got worse. But I can't afford the hospital admission fee. I can't even afford the follow-up appointment." Dorian's expression darkened. Not at her. At something else. The system. The cruelty of poverty. The way people like her had to choose between medicine and electricity. No one should have to make that choice, he said, and it didn't sound like a platitude. It sounded like fury, quiet and controlled. He stood, pulled out his phone, and made another call. I need a medical setup at 43 Riverbend Road. Full monitoring equipment for scans, medications for advanced pneumonia.
A pause.
I don't care about permits. This is a child. Make it happen. He ended the call and looked at her again. I'll be downstairs. Dr. Martinelli will need space to work. I'll make sure you're not disturbed. You're staying? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, that she'd even ask. Until Jonas is handled, yes. My men are positioned around the property. No one gets close without my knowing. He moved toward the door, then stopped. You haven't been protected before, have you? The words hit like a physical blow. Mara looked down at Caleb, at the brother she'd raised alone, at the weight she'd carried since the day their mother stopped breathing in a hospital bed they couldn't afford. No, she whispered. Not once. Dorian nodded slowly, like that confirmed something he'd already suspected. You are now. He left the room, and Mara heard his footsteps descend the stairs. Heard him moving through the house, checking windows, repositioning furniture. The sounds of someone fortifying a space, making it safe. 23 minutes later, Dr. Martinelli arrived with 2 assistants and enough equipment to run an ICU. He was efficient, professional, and asked no questions about why Dorian Vassari had summoned him to a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere at midnight. Mara stayed with Caleb through the examination, through the 4 insertion, through the oxygen mask placement. And when the doctor finally said, he's stable, the antibiotics should work quickly, he'll recover, she nearly collapsed with relief. Dorian remained downstairs all night. She could hear him, footsteps pacing occasionally, low phone conversations, the rustle of papers. At 3 a.m., she crept to the landing and looked down. He sat in the armchair by the window, laptop open, gun resting on the side table within easy reach. Watching, alert, keeping vigil over a house that wasn't his, for people he'd met hours ago. No one had ever done that for her before. She went back to Caleb's room and curled up in the chair beside his bed, listening to his breathing, steadier now, stronger. She let herself close her eyes. And then Caleb's breathing stopped. Just for 2 seconds. But in those 2 seconds, Mara's entire world ended. The 2 seconds stretched into eternity. Mara was halfway out of her chair, mouth open to scream, when Caleb's chest jerked, a sharp, sudden inhale that rattled through his small frame. The oxygen mask fogged. His breathing resumed, ragged but steady. Dr. Martinelli moved instantly, adjusting the oxygen flow, checking vitals, his hands quick and sure. Normal, he said calmly, as if children stopped breathing all the time. Maybe in his world, they did. His body is fighting the infection. The pause was likely a minor apnea episode from fever and fatigue. The 4 antibiotics are working. Mara couldn't move, couldn't breathe herself. She stood frozen, hands pressed against her mouth, watching her brother's chest rise and fall, like it was the only thing in the universe that mattered. Miss Dalton. Dr. Martinelli's voice gentled. He's stable. The worst is behind him. The words didn't register. Not at first. They floated somewhere above her head, unable to penetrate the shock that had locked her muscles in place. Then they landed. The worst is behind him. Something inside her shattered. Mara's knees buckled. She caught herself on the edge of the bed, but barely. A sob tore out of her throat, raw, ugly, the kind that came from depths she'd been holding closed for months.
Years.
Since her mother's funeral. Since her father's accident. Since the day she realized she was utterly, completely alone. She pressed her forehead against Caleb's blanket and wept. Not quiet tears. Not dignified grief. This was the breaking of someone who'd held too much for too long, and the relief of release was almost as painful as the burden itself. Dr. Martinelli excused himself quietly, murmuring something about monitoring equipment downstairs. His assistants followed. The door clicked shut. Mara didn't hear Dorian enter. She only realized he was there when she felt the chair beside her shift under new weight. She looked up through blurred vision to find him sitting an arm's length away, close enough to matter, far enough to let her breathe. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Caleb, his expression unreadable again, the softness from earlier locked away behind steel. But he stayed. He didn't tell her to calm down. Didn't offer empty reassurances. Didn't touch her or try to fix what was breaking. He just sat there, solid and present, while she fell apart. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. Time felt irrelevant. Finally, when her sobs quieted to shaking breaths, Dorian spoke. Jonas has been using you for 3 years. Mara's head snapped up. What?
His jaw tightened.
When he first approached my organization, he needed a reference. Someone clean. Someone with ties to the community who could vouch for his character. Dorian's eyes met hers. He used her name. Said you'd known him since childhood. That you trusted him. The words hit like stones. I did trust him, she whispered. I know. Dorian leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. He also listed this address, 43, Riverbend Road, as a secondary contact point. Said if anyone needed to reach him urgently, and he was unavailable, messages could be left with you. You'd pass them along. Mara's stomach turned. He never asked me to. Because he never intended to use it, Dorian said. He just needed the paper trail. Something that made him look legitimate. Rooted. Like someone who had people depending on him. His voice hardened. He weaponized your loyalty without ever telling you. She thought back to all the times Jonas had stopped by over the years. Casual visits. Checking in on her and Caleb. She'd thought he still cared, that their old friendship meant something. But he'd been maintaining his cover story. Using her address. Her name. Her love. He knew what he was doing, Dorian continued. He knew that if things went wrong, if people came looking for him, they'd find breadcrumbs leading here. To you. His eyes held hers, and for the first time, she saw anger there. Not at her, but for her. He made you collateral before you ever knew you were in the game. Mara's hands trembled. All those years. All that trust. Jonas hadn't just borrowed money from her. He'd made her a target. There's more, Dorian said quietly. The money he borrowed from you 2 years ago, the $2,000? He said it was for a business opportunity, Mara whispered. It was for gambling debts. He owed local bookies. Small-time operators I don't control. Dorian's expression remained neutral, but his tone carried disgust. He used your money to keep himself breathing, then disappeared into my organization where he thought bigger power would shield him. Every memory recontextualized itself in an instant. Every promise. Every apology. Every time Jonas had looked her in the eye and sworn he'd pay her back, that he'd make things right. He'd been lying the entire time. Not just lying. Planning. He's been in contact with people looking for him, Dorian said. Trying to negotiate a deal. Offering information about my operations in exchange for protection. He paused. Your voicemail tonight told me he's desperate enough to risk coming here. Which means he's out of options. And desperate men make catastrophic mistakes. Mara looked at Caleb, sleeping peacefully now, color already returning to his cheeks, the oxygen mask fogging rhythmically. She'd called Jonas to save her brother. Instead, she'd discovered the man she'd trusted had been using her for years. Had planted her name in criminal records. Had made her a target without her knowledge or consent. And the man who should terrify her, the man whose very name made people whisper, had saved Caleb instead. The irony wasn't lost on her. Neither was the choice ahead. She could walk away. Tell Dorian to leave, to take his protection and his dangerous world with him. Go back to struggling alone the way she always had. Or she could accept what was already true. She was involved now. Had been for years without knowing it. And the only person offering her a way through was the devil himself. Dorian handed her a phone. Not hers, a different one. Sleek and unmarked. Untraceable, he said. But it will sound like your number on his end. He can't know I'm involved. Mara stared at the device like it might explode. Her hands had stopped shaking, but inside, everything still felt unsteady. What do I say? The truth, Dorian replied, leaning against the doorframe of Caleb's room. You're desperate. You need money. Your brother is sick. You need him now. His eyes held hers. You don't mention me. You don't mention the voicemail you left earlier. You're calling because you have nowhere else to turn. She nodded slowly, fingers curling around the phone. He'll be suspicious, Dorian continued. He's been running scared for weeks. He'll ask questions. Let him. A pause. Paranoia makes people reveal more than they intend. Mara pulled up Jonas's number from memory. She'd never saved it anywhere else, some superstitious part of her thinking that if she didn't commit it to her contacts, maybe their history wouldn't feel so permanent. She dialed. It rang 4 times. Then 5. She almost hung up when the line clicked. Mara? Jonas's voice came through rough, exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. Jesus Christ, Mara, you can't call me right now. Her breath caught. He sounded different. Hollow. The easy charm he'd always carried had burned away, leaving something raw and frightened underneath. Jonas, I need help. Her voice cracked naturally. She didn't have to fake desperation. Caleb's sick. Really sick. Pneumonia. The hospital won't admit him without. Mara, stop. He cut her off, and she heard something rustle on his end. Movement. Like he was pacing. Stop talking. Are you at the house? Yes, I'm. Anyone with you? The question came too fast, too sharp. Mara glanced at Dorian, who gave a single slight nod. No, she lied. Just me and Caleb. Jonas, please, I just need. How did you get this number? His voice had changed, suspicious now, tight with something that might have been fear. You gave it to me, Mara said, which was true. He'd scrawled it on a napkin 6 months ago during one of his random visits, claiming it was his new work phone. Last spring. You said if I ever needed anything.
Right.
Right. He exhaled shakily. God, I'm sorry. Things are complicated right now. I don't care about complicated, Mara said, letting real emotion bleed through. I care about Caleb dying because I can't afford a hospital room. Silence stretched between them. She could hear his breathing, quick, shallow, like a trapped animal. The 2,000, she pressed. You said 6 months. It's been 2 years, Jonas. I need it.
Now.
More silence. Then, I don't have it. Something twisted in her chest. You don't have it, or you won't give it to me? Mara, his voice cracked. I'm in trouble. Real trouble. The kind where money is the least of my problems. Then come here, she said. We'll figure it out. Whatever it is, we'll. You can't help me. The words came out bitter, almost laughing. No one can. I took something I shouldn't have. From people who don't forgive. Her throat tightened. Dorian had been right. Jonas knew exactly what he'd done. I don't care what you took, Mara whispered. I care that my brother is dying. And you're the only person left who might. She let her voice break. Please, Jonas. Please. The silence that followed felt like drowning. Then, quietly. Okay. Her heart stuttered. Okay, she repeated. I'll come. Jonas's voice had changed again, resigned, defeated. Tomorrow night. After dark. I'll bring what I can. Tomorrow night? Mara's panic wasn't entirely manufactured. Jonas, Caleb needs help now. Tomorrow, he said firmly. I need time to move without being seen. And Mara? His tone dropped, taking on an edge that made her skin crawl. Don't let anyone follow you. Don't tell anyone I'm coming. If I even suspect someone's watching, if anyone knows, he paused. Caleb pays. The line went dead. Mara lowered the phone slowly, her hand trembling again. She looked at Dorian, who hadn't moved from his position by the door, but whose expression had gone ice-cold. He threatened Caleb, she whispered. The words felt unreal even as she spoke them. I heard. Dorian's voice carried a controlled fury that made the room feel smaller. Jonas is more desperate than I thought, which makes him more dangerous. Mara sank into the chair beside Caleb's bed, the phone still clutched in her hand. She'd once loved Jonas. Maybe not romantically, they'd never crossed that line, but she'd loved him the way you love someone who's been woven into your life since childhood. Someone who knew all your stories, all your fears. That person was gone now. Maybe he'd never existed. "We have until tomorrow night," Dorian said, already pulling out his own phone. "I'll position my people strategically, out of sight, but close enough to intervene if he makes a move against you or Caleb." "He won't hurt us," Mara heard herself say, then immediately wondered if she believed it. Dorian's eyes met hers, and the look in them was answer enough. "People do terrible things when they're cornered," he said quietly. "Jonas Hale is trapped, paranoid, and desperate. He knows he's a dead man walking." A pause. Men facing death stop caring about collateral damage. Mara looked at her brother, sleeping peacefully, oxygen mask still secure, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Safe.
For now.
But tomorrow night, Jonas would come. And she'd just agreed to put them both in the path of a man who'd already proven he'd sacrifice anyone to save himself. Even the people who loved him most. The diner parking lot sat empty except for 3 cars and the ghosts of better days. Mara had suggested it, neutral ground, public enough to feel safe, isolated enough after closing time that screaming wouldn't draw crowds. The neon sign flickered overhead, casting red and blue shadows across cracked asphalt. Jonas's truck pulled in at exactly 9 p.m. Mara watched from inside Dorian's SUV, parked 2 spaces over with tinted windows that turned them invisible. Her palms sweated against her jeans. Beside her, Dorian sat perfectly still, his eyes tracking every movement. "He's alone," Dorian murmured into his earpiece. "Perimeter stay sharp." She couldn't see his men, but she knew they were there, positioned in the woods behind the diner, in the abandoned gas station across the street. Watching. Jonas climbed out of his truck slowly, like his bones hurt. He'd lost weight, maybe 20 pounds. His face had gone hollow, cheekbones sharp beneath skin that looked paper-thin. His eyes darted constantly, checking shadows, hands trembling as he shoved them into his jacket pockets. He looked like a man who'd been running so long he'd forgotten how to stand still. Mara's door opened before she consciously decided to move. Dorian's hand touched her arm, light, brief, a reminder. "Be careful." She nodded and stepped out. Jonas's head snapped toward her. For a moment, something that might have been relief crossed his face. Then it crumbled into something worse.
Shame. Guilt. Fear.
Mara. Her name came out ragged. "God, Mara, I'm so sorry." She stopped 10 feet away, keeping distance between them. "Where's the money?" "I don't," he swallowed hard. "I couldn't get it. Everything I had I used to stay hidden, to stay alive." "Then why did you come?" His eyes glistened. "Because I owed you the truth." Something cold settled in her stomach. "What truth?" Jonas looked at the ground, then forced himself to meet her gaze. "I was going to take Caleb." The words landed like physical blows. "What?" Her voice came out barely a whisper. "Not to hurt him," Jonas said quickly, desperately. "Never to hurt him. Just to keep you from talking. From telling anyone where I'd been, what I'd done. I thought if I had Caleb somewhere safe, somewhere you didn't know his voice broke. You'd stay quiet. Keep me covered." Mara's vision blurred. Not from tears. From rage, so pure it turned everything white at the edges. "You were going to kidnap my brother," she said, each word carved from ice. "To control me." "I panicked," Jonas whispered. "The people I stole from, they're looking for me. They'll kill me, Mara. They'll kill everyone connected to me. I just needed insurance." Insurance. The word tasted like poison. That's what Caleb was to you. Insurance. Heartbreak crashed through her chest, not for what Jonas had done, but for who he'd revealed himself to be. The boy she'd known, the friend she'd trusted, had never existed. He'd been a fiction she'd believed because it was easier than seeing the truth. Now the truth stood in front of her, thin and jittery, and willing to destroy a child to save himself. Something inside her went numb. Not calm. Not forgiveness. Just empty. You need to leave, she said flatly.
Now.
Jonas's face crumpled. Mara, please, I just need. Leave. Her voice didn't rise. Didn't waver. Just stated fact. Movement behind Jonas made them both turn. Dorian emerged from the shadows near the diner entrance, hands visible, posture relaxed but radiating controlled threat. Jonas stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his own feet. Vassari. Jonas breathed, the name coming out like a prayer and a curse.
No.
No, she said. She lied. Dorian said simply. Congratulations, Jonas. You taught her well. Jonas spun toward Mara, betrayal and terror warring on his face. You set me up? You set yourself up, Mara replied. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, distant, mechanical. The moment you decided Caleb was expendable. Jonas backed toward his truck, eyes wild. You don't understand. Vassari isn't the worst of them. The people I stole from, they're coming. They'll tear through anyone to get to me. Headlights cut through the darkness. Not from one direction. From three. Black sedans, sleek and predatory, converged on the parking lot with military precision. Not Dorian's vehicles, these were different. Foreign plates. Windows darker than legal. They formed a perimeter in seconds, boxing them all in. Jonas's face went gray. Oh God.
No.
No, no, no. Dorian's entire demeanor shifted. His hand moved to his waistband. Gun. Mara realized with distant clarity, and he stepped between her and the approaching vehicles. Get behind me, he said quietly. Not a request. Jonas had collapsed against his truck, sliding to the ground. They found me, he whispered. I led them right to you.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. The sedan doors opened in unison. The first gunshot shattered the night. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just a crack that made Mara's ears ring and her body freeze in pure animal terror. Glass exploded from the diner window behind her. Someone shouted in a language she didn't recognize. Then everything became noise and movement and fear. Dorian's hand locked around her wrist, yanking her behind his SUV as bullets punched through metal with sounds like hammers on tin. She hit the ground hard, knees scraping asphalt, lungs refusing to work properly. Stay down. Dorian's voice cut through the chaos, and suddenly there were bodies everywhere, his men materializing from shadows, weapons drawn, moving with terrifying efficiency. But the rival gunmen were already advancing. 6 of them, maybe 7, spreading out in formation that spoke of military training. They didn't shout warnings. Didn't demand surrender. Just came forward with mechanical purpose, guns raised. Mara pressed herself against the SUV's tire, hands over her head, trying to make herself smaller. This wasn't like movies. There was no heroic music, no clever one-liners. Just the smell of gunpowder and her own sweat, the deafening percussion of weapons firing, and the taste of copper in her mouth from biting her tongue. A body dropped 10 feet away. One of Dorian's men, clutching his shoulder, blood spreading dark across his shirt. Not dead, but hurt.
Real.
Fall back. Dorian's command cut through the noise. Get her to the secondary vehicle. Hands grabbed Mara, not Dorian's, someone else's, dragging her toward a second SUV parked near the tree line. She stumbled, legs barely working, and caught sight of Jonas still crumpled by his truck. Jonas! The scream tore out of her before she could stop it. He wasn't moving. 2 of Dorian's men broke formation, running toward Jonas under covering fire. Bullets sparked off concrete around them. One man went down. The other reached Jonas, hauled him up, started dragging him toward cover. The shot came from nowhere. Jonas jerked, a sound escaping him that wasn't quite a scream, more like all the air leaving his body at once. Red bloomed across his chest. His legs gave out. No. Mara thrashed against the hands holding her, but they were too strong, pulling her backward even as her eyes stayed locked on Jonas collapsing to the pavement. Dorian's man got him to cover behind the truck, pressed hands against the wound. Jonas's face had gone paper white, lips moving but no sound coming out. The gunfire intensified. One of the rival gunmen went down, then another. Dorian moved like something inhuman, precise, controlled, every shot calculated. But there were too many of them, and they kept coming. Move. Now. Dorian appeared beside her, his own hands replacing his subordinates, pulling her toward the tree line. Blood streaked his jaw, his or someone else's. She couldn't tell. They reached the second vehicle. The engine was already running. Someone shoved her into the back seat. Dorian slid in beside her, shouting coordinates to the driver. Wait, Jonas. Mara tried to turn, to look back. He's coming. Torres has him. Dorian's voice was steel, allowing no argument. The SUV lurched forward, tires screaming. Through the rear window, Mara watched the diner parking lot recede, men still firing, muzzle flashes like lightning, Torres carrying Jonas's limp body toward a third vehicle. Then they were on the road, trees blurring past, the sound of gunfire fading but never quite disappearing from her ears. Mara's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Her breath came in gasps that didn't bring enough oxygen. The world felt tilted, wrong, like reality had fractured and she'd fallen through the cracks. Is he alive? She whispered. I don't know. Dorian was already on his phone, barking orders. Get Martinelli to the safe house. Multiple GSWs. I need him there in 20 minutes. I don't care how. Minutes passed in silence, punctuated only by Dorian's clipped commands and the driver's terse responses. Then her phone, the untraceable one Dorian had given her, buzzed. Torres, subject secure. Critical but stable. En route to safe house. Mara read it 3 times before the words made sense.
Alive.
Jonas was alive. The relief lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then the SUV's back door opened at a red light they shouldn't have stopped for, and Torres dragged Jonas inside, blood-soaked and barely conscious. His eyes found Mara's. Unfocused, but desperate. Mara. His voice came out wet, damaged. Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth. I was trying to save you from him. Her breath caught. Jonas, don't. Save your strength. You have no idea what he is. Jonas's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. His eyes were wild, pleading. What he's done. The things he's made disappear.
People.
Families. Anyone who... He coughed, blood flecking his lips. He's not protecting you. He's collecting you. Like he collects everyone who might be useful. And when you stop being useful, that's enough. Dorian's voice cut through, cold and absolute. But Jonas kept talking, words slurring together. Ask him about the Henderson family. Ask him about the girl from Portland. Ask him what happens to people he claims to protect when they try to leave. Torres, sedate him. Dorian's command was ice. No, wait. Mara started to protest, but Torres already had the syringe out, pressing it into Jonas's arm. Jonas's grip weakened. His eyes stayed locked on hers, even as they glazed over. Don't trust him, he whispered. Don't trust. His hand fell away. His head lolled back. Unconscious. Silence filled the vehicle. Mara turned slowly toward Dorian. He sat perfectly still, expression unreadable, blood still streaking his jaw. The man who'd saved her brother. Who'd offered protection. Who'd stayed awake all night, keeping vigil over her house. The man Jonas claimed disappeared families. For the first time since the black SUVs had arrived at her farmhouse, Mara looked at Dorian Vassari and felt something she'd thought she'd moved past.
Fear.
Not the fear of immediate violence. Something worse. The fear that she'd made a deal with something far more dangerous than she'd understood. And that it was already too late to take it back.
Pause. Think.
If you were Mara, what would you believe right now? Comment your take, and subscribe for part 8. The estate sat 30 miles outside the city, hidden behind iron gates and centuries-old oak trees that turned the driveway into a tunnel. Mara had expected something cold, a fortress, all concrete and cameras. Instead, she found a house that might have been beautiful if she could focus on anything beyond the fear still coiled in her chest. Stone facade. Ivy climbing the walls. Windows that glowed warm against the pre-dawn darkness. Caleb was already inside, transferred from the SUV by medical staff who'd materialized the moment they arrived. Dr. Martinelli had met them at the entrance, assured Mara her brother was stable, improving even. His fever had broken completely. The antibiotics were working better than expected. She'd watched them settle Caleb into a bedroom 3 times the size of his room at home. Plush carpet, heavy curtains, a bed that looked like it belonged in a hotel, and felt something inside her crack further. Safe. He was safe. But at what cost? Now she stood in a study lined with dark wood and leather-bound books, rain beginning to tap against tall windows. Dorian had disappeared to make calls, change out of his blood-stained clothes, coordinate whatever aftermath needed coordinating after a gunfight that should have made headlines, but probably wouldn't. She'd been alone for maybe 15 minutes before the door opened. Dorian entered, dressed simply now. Black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, looking somehow more dangerous, without the formal airs. The blood was gone. He looked almost normal. That was what made it worse. Who are you really? The question came out harder than she'd intended, but she didn't soften it. Dorian stopped mid-step, studying her across the expanse of polished wood. You know who I am. I know your name. I know people whisper it like a curse. Mara's hands clenched into fists at her sides. Jonas said you make people disappear, that you collect anyone who might be useful and discard them when they're not. What am I supposed to believe? For a long moment, Dorian said nothing. Then he moved to a cabinet, poured 2 glasses of something amber, and set one in front of her on the desk. She didn't touch it. He took a slow sip of his own, then spoke. My grandfather came to this country with nothing, he said quietly. He worked construction until his back gave out. My grandmother cleaned houses until her knees couldn't hold her anymore. They had 3 children. My father was the youngest. He stared into his glass. When my grandfather couldn't work, no one helped. When my grandmother got sick, no one came. They died poor, forgotten. While the people they'd worked for, built homes for, kept clean for, went on living comfortable lives. Mara stayed silent, watching something raw flicker across his features. My father decided no one in our family would suffer alone again, Dorian continued. He built power the only way available to someone with nothing, through fear, through force, through becoming indispensable to people who needed things done outside the law. His eyes met hers. He created an organization where loyalty was rewarded and protection was guaranteed. Not charity. Reciprocity. You're justifying. I'm explaining. His voice didn't rise, but it cut through hers effortlessly. My father made mistakes. He hurt people who didn't deserve it. He confused fear with respect. Dorian set his glass down. I rebuilt what he created. Differently. The people under my protection don't suffer alone. They don't choose between medicine and rent. They don't watch their children go hungry while working 3 jobs. They have security. Stability. Someone who answers when they call. By doing what? Mara demanded. By stealing? By threatening people? By making sure the people who prey on the vulnerable think twice, Dorian said evenly. By creating consequences for those who believe power means they can take without giving. By being the hand that catches people when every legitimate system has let them fall. He stepped closer. Yes, I operate outside the law. Yes, I've done things that would horrify you. But tell me, Mar, what has the law done for you? For Caleb? For the thousands of people in this county drowning in medical debt they'll never escape. The words hit too close. She thought of the hospital bills, the collection calls, the charity programs that promised help in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whenever funding came through. You're not a hero, she whispered. I never claimed to be. Dorian's expression remained steady. But I'm not the villain Jonas painted either. I don't collect people to use them. I build loyalty, because it's the only thing that endures.
He paused.
Do you know what I saw when I watched you hold your brother last night? Mara's throat tightened. She couldn't answer. Someone who protects fiercely, Dorian said, voice softening. Someone who would burn the world down before letting harm come to what she loves. That kind of loyalty, that kind of strength is rare. It's not something you demand. It's something you earn. His eyes held hers. I do not need devotion, Mara. I need loyalty. And you protect fiercely. I respect that. The sincerity in his voice felt like a physical weight on her chest. Jonas said. Jonas lied to you for years. Dorian interrupted gently. Used your name, your home, your trust as cover for his crimes. Then tried to take your brother as insurance. Why would his final words be the truth? He let that sink in. I won't tell you what to believe, but I will give you time to decide. Mara stared at him, mind spinning. Everything Jonas had said felt designed to hurt, to manipulate, to drive her away from the one person who'd actually helped. But what if that was exactly what Dorian wanted her to think? What do you want from me? She asked. Dorian stepped closer, not crowding, just closing the distance between them. Stay, he said simply. With your brother. Under my protection. Not as a prisoner, but as someone I would guard with my life. His voice dropped lower. Let me prove that loyalty runs both directions. That when I promise protection, I mean it. The offer hung between them, impossibly heavy. Outside, dawn broke through the rain, painting everything gold. Mara didn't answer immediately. She turned away from Dorian, walked to the window, and looked out at the sprawling estate grounds emerging from darkness. Manicured gardens, stone pathways, security lighting that cast everything in soft amber. Somewhere in this house, Caleb slept in a bed bigger than their entire living room, under blankets that probably cost more than a month's rent, breathing easily for the first time in a week. Safe. The word kept echoing in her mind. She thought about the farmhouse. Cold, leaking, smelling permanently of mildew and desperation. Thought about the nights she'd lain awake listening to Caleb cough, counting the money in her wallet, doing math that never added up. Thought about working double shifts at the diner, coming home to find collection notices taped to the door, smiling at Caleb like everything was fine while her hands shook from exhaustion. She thought about her mother's funeral, standing in borrowed black, accepting condolences from people who'd returned to warm houses and full refrigerators while she figured out how to stretch $50 across 2 weeks. She thought about her father's accident, the insurance company denying the claim on a technicality, the lawyer who'd promised to help then disappeared when she couldn't afford his retainer. She thought about Jonas, promises wrapped in lies, friendship that had been nothing but exploitation from the start. Every person she'd trusted. Every system that claimed it existed to help. Every institution that had closed its doors when she needed them most. No one had chosen her safety. No one had stood between her and the hunger, the fear, the crushing weight of being alone in a world that didn't care if she survived. Until a man whose name people whispered like a curse had appeared in her doorway during a storm. Mara pressed her forehead against the cool glass. I was 7 years old when my mother got sick, she said quietly, not looking at Dorian. Breast cancer. We had insurance, the kind with premiums we could barely afford and deductibles that might as well have been millions. Every month we chose between her treatment and something else. Electricity.
Food. Heat.
Her breath fogged the window. I remember being cold. So cold. And hungry. And watching my mother cry because she knew choosing her own life meant we suffered. Behind her, Dorian said nothing. Just listened. My father worked himself to death trying to keep us afloat, Mara continued. Took every dangerous job, every overtime shift, every under-the-table cash payment. And when he fell from that scaffolding, the company claimed he'd violated safety protocol. No insurance. No settlement. Just bills and a funeral we couldn't afford. She turned to face him finally. I've been surviving alone since I was 16, she said. Raising Caleb alone. Fighting alone. Losing alone. Her voice cracked. No one ever came. No police, no social services, no community programs that were supposed to exist. Just paperwork and waiting lists and people telling me to be patient while my brother went hungry. Dorian's expression remained steady, but something in his eyes had softened.
You're saying you understand, Mara said.
It wasn't a question. I'm saying I've seen what the world does to people it decides don't matter, Dorian replied quietly. And I've spent my life making sure they matter to someone. Mara studied him, This man who commanded fear but had sat beside her while she broke, who'd saved her brother without asking for payment, who'd offered her something no one else ever had.
A choice.
Not rescue that demanded gratitude. Not charity that came with shame. Not help that turned into a leash.
Power.
Her own power. The ability to say yes or no and have it mean something. "I'll stay," she said. The words felt like jumping off a cliff, terrifying and freeing simultaneously. "But I won't be owned," she added, voice firm now. "I won't be something you collect or control, or keep in a pretty house like a possession. If I stay, it's as myself, with my own voice, my own choices." Something that might have been respect flickered across Dorian's face. "Good," he said simply. "I'm not asking to own you, Mara. I'm asking to stand with you." The distinction mattered. Everything hung on that distinction. Not above her. Not in front of her blocking the world. Beside her. Facing it together. "Caleb comes first," Mara said. "Always. If anything you do, anything your world touches, puts him in danger. Then you walk away," Dorian finished. "No questions. No consequences. That's non-negotiable." She searched his face for the trap, the hidden terms, the fine print that would turn this choice into a cage. Found only certainty. And maybe something else, something that looked like understanding between two people who'd both learned that safety was something you built yourself when the world refused to provide it. "Okay," Mara whispered. Dorian extended his hand. Not to shake. Not to seal a deal. Just an offer of connection. She took it. His grip was warm, solid, steady. The hand of someone who'd promised to stand between her and harm. Who'd proven he meant it. The future stretched ahead, uncertain and dangerous, and alive with possibility. She didn't know if this was the right choice. Didn't know if Dorian Vassari was savior or monster, or something more complicated that lived in the space between. But for the first time in her life, the choice had been entirely hers. And she'd chosen power over safety nets that never caught anyone. She'd chosen loyalty built on respect instead of desperation. She'd chosen to stop surviving alone. Outside, the sun finally broke through the clouds, turning the rain-soaked world into something that glittered. A new day. Whatever came next, she'd face it standing beside someone who'd proven that protection meant something when it was freely given and freely accepted. Not dependence. Not submission.
Partnership.
The kind built on mutual respect and the recognition that sometimes the people the world calls dangerous are the only ones willing to fight for those the world forgot. If you want to see their relationship evolve into something deeper, darker, and unbearably emotional, hit subscribe. You don't want to miss where this goes. Should Mara fall in love with him, or betray him someday? Comment your vote.